The harmony between instrument, surroundings and sounds. But before the first steps can be taken, the church door has to be measured. The organ must be able to fit through it. And it's made by first-class craftsmen. But let's start at the beginning. On the very day that the carefully selected wood is delivered to Leeflang Orgelbouwers in the middle of the Netherlands. In this instance, the wood is white, French oak. It blends beautifully in the church interior. These are whole trees which an organ builder always works with. So, no annoying colour differences show up in the construction. The designer has made an exact list of wood required. Each is outlined on the incoming logs or blocks. The size of every piece of wood is shown. Of course, the organ builders are always watching out for knots, rot and cracks. The quality of the cabinet has already been determined at this point. Then, the cutting and carving. In the past, everything was done by hand. Here, the draftsman works out the details of the specifications of the organ. Before the wood can be cut to the specification list, some 2 or 3 months for drawing must elapse. A large organ requires about this time. Concept and design. That's what it's all about. Church council wanted a special organ, reminiscent of the sounds of the latter half of the 19th century. That meant a romantic type of organ. So they opted for a South Holland Flemish type. It could have been designed around 1860. Everything is drawn according to the principle of the Golden Rule, the classic proportion applied to ancient architecture and art. This organ will be 6.25 meters tall, 1.65 meters deep, and 3.35 meters wide. All measurements are made in millimeters to render them as accurately as possible. The dimensions are dictated by the organ design. At the bottom, the mechanical portion, and above, the pipework or unit creating the sound. After smoothing, planing and straightening the wood, bringing it to length and marking the lengths of the pegs of the casing, the foundation is laid. Everything must fit together perfectly. Nothing can jiggle or be loose. The air must be drier in the studio than in the church. Swelling from moisture is harmless, but shrinkage cracks are a disaster for an organ. Over the past 40 years, many wonderful instruments have been completely destroyed by church heating systems. These arched bases are composed of thin panels carved from solid oak. The arches are pulled down from top to bottom. The panels are then clamped together, forcing the glue between the sheets to drain. After drying out, the entire arch flexes back. The drawing constantly allows a check on your work. Perfect. After more detailed work with sandpaper and scraper, the skeleton of the lower chest begins to take shape. The mechanical action enters the scene later. The key mechanism and the pipe registers. Nowadays, we feel an organ in a church is indispensable. The feelings of the Calvinistic church of the 16th century, however, were quite the opposite. But in the 17th century, bellows were pumping once again. At the end of the 18th century, the introduction of the new version of the rhyming psalms and hymn book proved to be an enormous stimulation for church organ music. And these hymns demanded character and colour, character which the voices of the organ could offer perfectly. For this, it was necessary to have a number of keyboards, which resulted in extra work for the organ builders. The construction craft is already centuries old. Only the type of glue and screws have changed with the times. In the old days, iron screws were used, but no longer. Brass screws are undesirable. They twist off in harder types of wood. This explains why modern galvanized screws are used. And although new discoveries do find their place, the old carpenter's thinking is still unassailable. Meanwhile, the divider section is level with the floor. The upper chest is made and subsequently placed upon the lower chest. Here is the soul of the organ, the wind chest with which the wind is driven en route to the pipes. But what about the bellows? In this case, they are literally positioned under the organ. The pump is in the cellar. All the details of the front are now finished. The sharpest chisels guarantee the drawings are perfectly reproduced. The wood is then polished with its own shavings. The wooden ball fits and closes the round outline of the towers. Oak contains tannic acid. This is an acid which harms pipes of tin and lead unless preventative steps are taken. Damage to the pipes can be avoided by scorching the base where the pipe feet will later be placed. The pipe holder fitted onto the side tower. All adornments are sketched piece by piece. The seemingly free and loose line drawing corresponds perfectly with this organ from the Romantic period. But it is once again that strict relationship shown by the golden rule which brings order and rhythm into the towers and panels. It introduces harmony and beauty. This is the base foundation figure, used not only by this architect, but also by Da Vinci and Michelangelo, the regular pentangle. Monastic work, says the designer, to draw this ornamental panel. A steady hand is needed to cut it, says the carpenter. The pentangle is essentially a philosophical discipline. This discipline serves as inspiration. It guides with its proportion and achieves astounding visual elegance. Chance and luck play a subordinate role, or even none at all during the sketch of a creative fantasy. Almost all Gothic churches were constructed to these proportions. The Parthenon and the famous Stradivarius violin, too. This is the gluing process of the wooden pipes. In addition to the metal pipes, each organ also has wooden pipes for the deep basses with their rich tones. All the work demonstrates what an organ actually is. A wind instrument, much as a recorder or a trumpet. It is a wind machine in which bellows drive air through pipes. The sound which results is called the speaking of the pipes. It's obvious that the pipes must have perfect dimensions. Otherwise they speak flat. The organ is not tuned properly. That's why sanding, checking and more sanding, and finally follows the line of pipes perfectly placed and secured with adhesive clamps. Another tone ready. Then follow the alloy pipes of tin and lead. It's known as organ metal and is cast at a temperature of 450 degrees Celsius at a thickness of 1/2 to 3 millimeters. It is then cooled, polished and soldered. This work is subcontracted, but the design indicates the exact measurements as well as the accurate proportions of tin and lead. This is the trick of the trade of the organ builder, because the proportion of the alloy contributes to the tone of the pipes. Let's return to the workshop. Both wood experts are busy with a wind chest, where the pipes are later to be installed. Each groove leads towards a key. Positioning key components requires meticulous work. Air will later flow through here, creating the magic sound of the organ. Glue is used to close the pores of the wood so that no air will leak. The glue stays liquid just long enough to seal all the small holes. The entire construction operation progresses from rough to fine, from full power to sensitive fingertip touch. This is important when arranging the pedals in the cylinder chest where the air passes. It's important when adjusting the pedals in the keyboard. The pegs secure them and provide almost friction-free movement. The 80 centimeter long keys are perfectly balanced, whereby the organist is assured of a light and easy playing action. Numerous small components are located between key and tone, which convert the composer's intentions into sound via mechanical action. The organ is made operational. The parts must be durable and not wear. That's why boxwood and beech are used. Church organs on the average have 56 keys for the manual and 30 keys for the pedal, but only the manuals can be stacked. A first test run in the workshop. But this organ wouldn't be complete without its woodcut decorations. The choice is made for the insignia of the ecclesiastical authority of the town, a peaceful place. You can always recognize the work of a good woodworker by the shining surface left behind by his chisels and tools. It's a radiance which comes from the shine on the cuts and the effect of the perspective and the fall of the light. Finally, it's ready. All connections and couplings are secure. The organ consists of Hauptwerk, or the great organ, and a Schellwerk, or solo organ, which gives dynamic nuances to the tone. There are also couplers between the great organ and the pedal, between the solo organ and the pedal, and also one between the two units themselves. Indeed, a work of art in popular terms. The word organ is derived from the Greek organon, which means instrument. This is the man who tunes the instrument, the tuner. He adjusts the speaking of the pipework in the workshop. But this is merely preliminary work. The real tuning takes place within the acoustics of the church. The pipes are cut to final length here. This organ has 21 voices or stops, meaning that there are approximately 1,000 pipes which must be tuned. Each voice or stop has its own name. All of them are named after musical instruments, such as traverso, violin, oboe and trumpet. The famous organ composer César Franck referred to the organ as "my orchestra." And another great composer, such as Johann Sebastian Bach, transcribed many orchestral works for the organ. 1 year after starting work, the organ is complete. It is finished down to the smallest details. The entire organ must now be disassembled and transported for installation in the church. Installation takes 2 weeks. 4 weeks are then devoted to properly tuning it. And lastly, the application of beeswax. The labia are meanwhile coated with 18-carat leaf gold. The philosopher Schiller put it well when he wrote in his hymn book, "Where discipline combines with tenderness, and power with gentleness, there will originate a great sound."